Get started. Open the meeting, Selectmen's meeting for January 14th, 2021. We're going to take action on the minutes for December 10th, the 14th, and the 17th. Make a motion, we accept the minutes for those dates.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We got two thank you letters for St. Paul's Episcopal Church and the Berkshire Conic Foundation for in lieu of tax payments.
Good.
We say how much they have, or somewhere. How much they donated?
Are they in the packet?
They should be right
In here?
Yeah.
They're in here.
I know I see them somewhere. Berkshire Conic Community Foundation for $1,000. In St. Paul's Episcopal Church for $500.
Great.
So thank you, both of you organizations.
What does Berkshire DeConic own in town?
What's that?
What does Berkshire DeConic own in town?
Not true.
Okay.
I have to find out.
Hey, as an aside, if anybody is listening, Moose, the guy that takes care of Bullard Woods, cut up a lot of ash, I think he said, that is free to pick up on Saturday and Sunday. They're opening the gate in the main parking lot. So if you bring your truck down and you need some wood, you can go to Bullard Woods and get it for free.
Okay. Discuss and vote on reserve fund transfer for the AVAC system for the town offices here.
So we have a reserve account transfer for the HVA system, $59,500. Over the summer, the HVA system went down and ended up being a crack. The pipes leading into the building had cracked. Might be because of just the way it underground settled, but the pipes had definitely sunk, and you can see where it was bowing. It is a pretty hefty price tag because we did have to pull up the sidewalks and then replace the sidewalks and part of the driveway. So there was a lot of work that was involved. We did look into all avenues as far as whether or not it could be covered by insurance or something, but piping underground is not covered. It's an exclusionary item. So therefore it wasn't covered under insurance, and so therefore you have this transfer order in front of you. It's been approved by the finance committee at their meeting. If you guys approve it tonight and sign it, then the chairman will come in most likely tomorrow, sign it, and then we'll transfer the money to cover the costs.
How much we left after this? It's like 20 something.
We'll have well, after we transfer from the reserve account, we'll still have $90,500 in the reserve account. And the balance in the town office building repair line will be $22,033.
Okay, I'll make a motion. We do the transfer.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye. Passes. Special permit hearing to consider the application of Chancey E. and Elizabeth Hazen for property located on 22 Yale Hill Road. I see you're out there. How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. So you're tearing down the existing garage and putting up a new one, correct?
The existing one has come down.
Down already. Okay.
The site is prepared.
And same footprint minus the second story, correct?
No, it's minus about 42 square feet that was closer to the brook, away from the street. And so it's a rectangular shape. It will have the same height as the previous structure, but it won't have any loft or second story.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
Goes away.
And what else did I say?
It's the same footprint, except as they already addressed that.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Anybody have any questions or?
Yeah, we're the neighbors, and
Yeah.
just putting it right out there that we adore the Hazens, both Liz and Ned. And certainly we will not be standing in the way of any of this. However, we do have some questions, most of which actually sort of predates the Hazens being next door. There's a part of this barn that is on the southeast corner that encroaches on our property, the back corner. Now, my understanding is, and that as Liz just said, they chopped off the back portion of the barn. However, there's still some of it that's going to remain on our property. Now, we understand that there's no practical way to move this within current setbacks, and of course, that would be ridiculous. We are just wondering, for the sake of asking the question, can it be moved 3 feet to the north to move it off our property? And that may not be at all practical either, and we certainly understand that. And then our question is, and this may be more a question for the lawyers, there was an easement granted from some previous owners of this house to some previous owners of the Hazen's house. Now there's some wording in there in the easement that we've read. It helps very much that my wife Susan is a realtor and can get all these documents. The wording being easement that may or may not still exist. Anyway, the wording is, quote, to construct and maintain this barn, this structure. And it's since been torn down. So is it technically still being maintained?
Where are you seeing this, Will? Is this in the Schedule A?
We can show it to you, actually. Hang on, we'll hold it up.
Thank you.
Susan is right here, and she's the expert, of course.
Where's the one that I gave
You
you?
underlined it.
Can I just ask you a question geographically?
Yes.
Is north towards our house?
Your house is actually, here, I can show
When
you.
you're asking to move it 3 feet north?
I don't know if you can see it on here.
Yeah.
There's a compass rose sort of on top.
Or,
Oh, we have that, I think.
I think
Yeah,
you
we
have a
this.
copy of it.
oh, yeah.
Your house is northeast of that little triangle.
Right.
So, so we're just wondering, I guess, is it still going to be on our property? And this, well, anyway, here, let me get back to the
Well,
original.
can I answer that, Will?
Absolutely, go ahead.
If you look at this same picture that you were referring to,
Yeah. Yes, that's the one.
if you look at the little jut out that we've cut off,
Yeah,
you see that we have moved off of your property line some, not fully,
yeah,
but some because of the removal of that L.
understood. We understand that.
Do you want us to address, can we move the whole thing?
Well, can it be, and you can, be speaking completely practical terms, can that back corner be moved over 3 feet? And this goes back to, or approximately 3 feet. This goes back to what I was saying a second ago when you were asking about the wording. It's here, and we can email it to you or something might be way more practical.
It's on our deed.
But I'll read it to you. It's on our
Is the one
deed.
the same as the decrepit garage? It's already been torn down?
Yes, it was burnt and rotted.
So the place you're building the barn is the same place where this, I'm just having a hard time following this map of the property.
Okay, so,
We do have a predicament here because if the easement doesn't allow, since
This is-
it was to erect and maintain a garage, and now that they're rebuilding new, we can't give permission for somebody to build on somebody else's property.
Right.
So
Maybe we need to answer
unless
these
the
questions.
easement is corrected between the parties and either a new agreement or something else, I don't see how we can approve
No, not at this point.
something that is sitting on somebody else's property without either an easement, without an easement.
Well, there is an
Yeah.
easement.
See, that's the thing, and we didn't, like we said in the outset, we're not looking to create trouble, and we absolutely want the Hazens to build their barn. But here's what the easement says. Subject to an easement granted by J.K. Conklin and Christina M. Conklin to Hollins College Corporation to erect and maintain a garage building as recorded in the Berkshire Middle District Registry of Deeds in Book 1571, page 603 and C. So that was the original easement. And so our biggest question is, does this easement still exist legally since we've gone through a few owners in both properties? And
But that's obviously not a question for us.
because it's been torn down,
The easement would still exist if you were maintaining, but because it's now a new construction or a rebuild of it, the easement may not be valid anymore. So before the board can approve a special permit, there has to be a answer to this question from, the Hazens are gonna have to prove that they have legal right to build upon this property.
I don't have that particular language. I have a reference to that easement in the book. Pardon me?
It's in the deed.
It's in the deed. I don't have it in front of me right now. But as we discussed the practicality of moving the building 3 feet off the property line, I will tell you it would be a tremendous expense to us because we are rebuilding the barn on the existing foundation minus that butt out. So to move the foundation the barn would be creating 3 feet more of foundation towards our house, which would mean removal of trees and roots and changing and ledge and changing dramatically the whole thing. I mean, I'm not quite sure what the issue is because this is a small amount of overlap on your property that just faces the side of the Airbnb.
I think that our concern is more into the future when when you are either trying to sell your house or we're trying to sell ours and there's no actual easement in place anymore. I think that is our biggest concern.
If we're sure that there is no easement now.
Okay,
because
so
we took down the barn.
Okay.
I've got the easement up.
The section on the recommendation.
Yeah, the easement shall be for the erection and maintenance of the garage building and is shown as that area of the Conklin property land covered by the existing garage on a plan entitled Plan of Land in Stockbridge, Massachusetts, prepared for Hollins College. So it's for erection and maintenance of a building,
Okay,
Original vote.
yeah. So since the building is now gone, you
We're
probably
not
have
lawyers.
to.
We can't resolve this.
Yeah,
This meeting-
the other, the parties, the neighbors, the Laidlaws and the Hazens need to discuss this and with their attorneys and see what you can come up with. But you may need to, create a new easement, but I would ask your attorneys about it.
I'll make a motion that we continue this at a later date when you
would you
get this figured out, then let us know and we'll set another date for the special permit.
In order to.
when's the next meeting?
We need to,
Set a
if we're
date.
gonna continue, it has to be to a date certain. So I would recommend that we place it on the January 28th meeting at 6:30. And if they don't have, then we can continue it again.
Okay, I'll make a motion. We continue this to the January 28th meeting at 6:30 PM.
It's only 3 weeks away, or less than 3 weeks. That should be fine. Okay,
Second.
thank you.
Seconded.
Yeah, all those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. East Main Street sidewalks. Mike?
Yes, and so one of the things, we had residents call in after the last large heavy snowstorm about the clearing of sidewalks on East Main Street, which got us looking into what we done in the past, what's the right thing, what's not. I had discussions with Mass DOT. I know some of our residents had discussions with Mass DOT. We also looked at it, and we did end up clearing the sidewalks during the last storm with the idea of bringing it forward to the select board as if this is something we should continue to do. The state will only come and wing it.
Yeah,
which
that doesn't
they-
do anything.
It doesn't. It leaves it in areas, it pushes it back. It really doesn't do a good cleaning of the sidewalks. So right now is consideration that after storms, it won't be obviously during the storms, but it'll become after we clear the downtown and that we move on to sections such as East Road and some of the other streets. I believe Church Street and others, there are sidewalks that we do clear. So we would add East Main into that secondary clearing of sidewalks. So we do our regular street plowing, we prioritize our downtown business district, and then we do all of our other sidewalks. And this would be putting East Main Street in with the other sidewalks in town.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to do it until the storm's done and the state's finished pushing everything
Yeah,
back.
and then we come in and we
Do it once. And we have this issue every year. It comes up after any big storm, and I have no issue with it. They are
And we've
our
checked,
citizens and taxpayers, and
we,
I don't know if we want to ask Hugh.
yeah,
his
Hugh
thoughts.
is
yeah.
here. and-
Hugh,
Hugh,
Oh,
hi.
hi.
So
how you
you,
doing?
hi. So you did the sidewalks once. How long did it take?
It took a little bit the last heavy storm. I think once we get a rhythm down, things will move a lot faster,
Yeah.
And I think not to prioritize it should be, a main point too, we should start from the main and work outwards.
Well, we figured it would be after the state is done, clean everything up, pushing it back, then you go do it.
Right, and the state wings them sidewalks off when it builds up, but the wing just, it leaves a few inches on the sidewalk, so we can go through and clean it up afterward. But, a storm, smaller storms, they don't even really put any focus on them sidewalks,
Explain what wing is for everyone.
So wing,
That's-
go ahead, Hugh, you're better.
Hugh, can you explain what wing is to everyone?
Oh, I'm sorry, a wing plow off the right-hand side of the truck. You can set the height and go down through and push that back further than off the roadside, you can actually, clear the sidewalk with it.
Okay.
But it doesn't get it perfectly clear, it just actually makes more room for future storms, snowstorms is what they do. And, so their focus isn't, making it clean, it's making it more room for the next snow is
Yeah.
really what the wing, what they're doing, And it might go a couple storms, they might not even wing it back, so.
No, so you have no issue doing that at the end of your routes, at the end of your cycle.
Yeah, I think the main focus is in the heavy traffic areas,
Yeah.
Main Street, Elm Street, Park Street, things like that. And then, sometimes we might not get it to the next day, like if guys are out working all day and I got them in all night with snow, for safety reason, I just can't justify sending them out to do all that till they get a little sleep. We come in the next day and we do our snow removal on Main Street and, finish up the sidewalks and stuff,
Yeah, that's perfect. That's what we're kind of looking for.
Yeah.
Anybody
So
got questions?
I think we can take it on as, just as people be aware, or have a little, be aware of the fact that as soon as it stops, it's not gonna be, that's not a priority, although, we want to make sure pedestrians aren't walking in the roads, so we can take it on and take care of it, but it might be later in the day or the next day or something,
Okay. Any questions from anybody out there about it? Have any of you guys?
I'm okay with it. I think we should.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we do the East Main Street sidewalks at the schedule of the highway department.
Before we vote, is the Pinewood sidewalk also in this, you know,
There is no.
No,
there's no
Pinewood.
Pinewood, so what, but you know, where it picks up over by Pinewoods and goes, is that a state road or a town road? That's a town road,
They do
right?
that sidewalk.
No, where Pinewood is state highway.
There's no sidewalk
There's
there
no
though.
sidewalk.
there's
but
no
I'm talking about it
sidewalk.
goes into Church Street.
That's taken care of.
They
Okay.
do that.
Yes, you do all of Church Street, correct? Sidewalks?
Yes, yeah, and we did 7 there this last heavy storm, just because we see the, pedestrians are on it and the state didn't do it, so, I sent them down, we just kind of opened that up a little bit, just, safety, because you see people walking along the edge of the road, so, we just tried to help out, but.
What about between Ice Glen, Ice Glen Road all the way into town? Route
That-
7 is another state highway.
That's the one he's,
That's the one I was talking about. That's another one the state's supposed to maintain, and I'm not sure what the situation was with them, but they hadn't got to it when the concerns were with the other walk. I said, well, on your way back, just open that up, because it's gonna warm up and it'll melt off and.
yeah, there's never going to be a question about that, Hugh.
Are we authorizing Hugh to use good judgment to do either of these areas, or are we just focused on East Main Street?
No, I would
I
include
think we should take
South
care
Street
of
in that too,
Yeah, I didn't realize.
Okay,
with your judgment and your scheduling.
yep,
Like I said, we don't want the guys working 20 hours and then trying to clear those sidewalks or anything. So,
Right.
yeah. So
Make
make a motion that the town does the East Main Street sidewalks and the South Street sidewalks at the discretion of the highway department.
I'll second.
Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, got any issues with it? You just let us know. We'll work it out.
no, I think, yeah, we'll go ahead and take care of it. I don't see any issues, so.
Yeah,
And Michael, can you reach out to the gentleman that wrote us the letter and just let him know that we approved it last night?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
and thank you for everything. You were doing a great job.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Getting a good crew, so we're starting to get a lot done, so,
Yeah, it's noticeable.
thank you.
Okay, CPC projects.
So place this on, because next week we have to put in, if the town is putting in for any CPC projects. The two possible ones to expand upon for the town is the Chime Tower and then Soldiers Monument.
Yeah.
Soldiers Monument, we don't have a price yet. There was a notice that they did the groundwork, then they're gonna come back and do some of the other groundwork around the monument. I know that Patrick, you're in favor of putting some money into that, so that if additional work needs to be done, that it can be done this construction season instead of
Right.
having to wait for another one. And now that we've gotten in all the prices for the Chime Tower, the Chime Tower has the masonry work, the bells reconfiguring, the rebuilding of the roof back to its historical standards. Right now, we're sitting on, and would have to add the clock face still to that if we were to fix that, but without the clock face, we're looking at over $500,000. So it's a lot of money for that project. It's not really a project that CPC can handle. There was some talk about whether to place it on in order to show that the town is supporting it, if we were to go after, say, a mass preservation fund. Due to limited funding, so the Mass Preservation Fund can do up to, they have a couple different options. And the biggest one that allows for larger projects that you then have to create an endowment where they'll pay up to 75%. But you have to chip in 25% and then add another 25% and set up a fund to support it. Due to their limited funding this year, they already have noticed on their application that most likely they will not be considering those larger projects because they have only limited funding for this upcoming season. So we might be able to go up for up to 100,000 in a grant application through the preservation. But as far as getting a larger amount, it looks as though it'll be a slim chance this year and may have to be something we look at in the following year.
So what if we,
But the other options are to consider is this something that the town itself takes on
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
through
What if-
CPC or?
So we're probably looking at roughly what, 525,000?
Probably, yeah.
So,
Excuse me, the clock is 25?
well,
I
I'm
think it's
just
gonna be about
guessing.
20,000, yes.
That was a good guess. That we see what the CPC can give us and then put the rest on the town warrant, on the town article.
But then we
With-
require, I'm sorry.
And then try to get the 100,000, being we already, if we vote to do it and that money's there, they make it be easy to get that 100,000. I think it's got to be done, and to do piecework is going to cost more in the long run. I was just in favor of getting the whole project done in one shot.
And this is a type of project, if we do it right, do it once, this is something that building with a decent maintenance budget. Right now, we put $800 into it.
Yeah.
If we were to put, say, a couple thousand into it every year and just make sure anytime there's any little leak, any little minor thing that we can take care of it, there's no reason why this couldn't be a fix for the next
Yeah, let the
30 to
voters
50 years.
decide
So,
they want to do
Yeah.
that. I mean, it's,
Okay, so I have a couple of concerns on this one, and it relates both to this and the Soldiers Monument. The Soldiers Monument is actually it sounds like is in much worse shape because the facing is coming off the stone. And so what happens is all the writing that has all the soldiers' names on it is degrading. Where we gravitated it to try to shore that up, and they're gonna do an evaluation of how that is next June or July. If we don't fund that as a priority, then it could conceivably be till next July before we have funding. And then we could end up with, it may get too cold too quick by the time we can get the quotes out and everything, the bidding out. And you could be looking at 2 years, at which point we might need to start over because we wouldn't have all the scans that we did this past year, we're not gonna have. Now, I believe that Amanda gave us an upper level range, set of quotes, like what she thought the least would be versus the most would be. And I think that if the town's gonna put in something for historic into CPC, then we should fund your high range. If we don't spend all that, we return it next year to CPC. And on the chime tower, why require the town to vote twice on it? If we need the money for both projects, we might as well just put the chime tower into the budget. And, if we end up, looking at some bridges or whatever, we can possibly, include that in some kind of, as we refinance those bonds, if we decide to do that, or we, simply look at that and maybe the average bridge or something as a set.
I'm not sure I follow the town voting twice on it.
CPC is all individual votes now, and then if we have to appropriate the difference, we're then voting twice on kind of one thing.
Right, okay.
So, some things to consider is if we were to approach the chime tower as a borrowing, and with interest rates as low as they are,
That's right.
for 20 years, $500,000, we could be looking at borrowing, somewhere in the neighborhood of 25,000 a year would be added on to the tax rate.
which is
And that's,
And then we also still could
Refinance
try to
bond.
knock 100,000 off by going after the mass preservation funds and see if we can knock some of that down.
Why don't
So
we
We
discuss-
can explore those options. If you'd rather have me explore just one option of a town meeting vote on the chime tower, and then do you want us to get an application in on the soldier monument it's gonna be due next Friday, so that'll become my priority for the beginning of the week to get that in. So
well, for
you tell
the,
me what I'm doing.
what's got to be done for next Friday?
That's the
Anything
deadline.
for CPC. So do
CPC
you want me
deadline.
to,
Well, can we put them both in, then take one out if we need to down the
well, the
road?
question.
There's only
becomes, do you want
270,000 in
to-
CPC. I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
you can't even come close to funding both of these.
Well, put it into I would say, put it into the Soldiers Monument.
Soldier monument?
Yeah.
And I think we should discuss this with the Finance Committee. We meet with them and
we'll
get our
put the
best
chime
route work
tower-
together.
And do you have the information from Amanda?
I tried finding those estimates. I saw her report about the June, July, but I did not see the cost estimates.
I'll
So
look, and if not,
If
we
you
can call
can,
her.
then we'll just send it to her and get it.
Yeah, I just don't want to waste, I don't want to lose, I don't want to redo the work we already did because too much time has elapsed.
No, we definitely don't want to do that. And I think this is a topic with the Finance Committee.
Now, one of the things to remember with CPC right now is that if you have undesignated funds, they go into the three buckets. They go into the housing bucket or the open space bucket or the historical preservation bucket. There is a fairly significant amount of money in the undesignated fund balance for historical, 157,000, I think. Now, for some reason, they like to keep some of it in case the state cuts its grant, its matching grant in future years, but it is significantly higher than the other two buckets. And it could be, I'm hesitant to, the total of the amounts, not including this project, that others have already reviewed at the public meeting last Friday was about $578,000. So you add to that, let's say this was 50 to 100 to finish the Soldiers Monument. We've got basically 3 times the project request that we have the money to fund. And so, I think, frankly, in general, I believe that the town projects should get priority funding. I think this is a hard year because of the pandemic and the economy to necessarily really change policy that dramatically and drastically, as regards to nonprofits. But, that's going to be up to the committee. Obviously, we only get 2 seats, but.
Okay. We're all set with that?
Yeah,
Okay, budget discussions?
Well, before, we have kind of an opening on CPC. I know it was on the agenda, so we can't actually vote on it. One of our 2 reps hasn't shown up in 2 years. So I'm happy to keep showing up. I want to know if it's, within the parameters of what we're talking about here. I want to know if you have some other candidate in mind or if.
no, we should act on this. Yeah, and I would move that we designate Patrick to be a representative for the select board on the CPC.
Can we do that tonight?
Can we do that?
We'll place, because it's not an emergency and not
We'll place it on
something that
next,
came in, let's put it on
Thursday.
Thursday morning.
Okay, so before the voting.
Before the next
Yeah.
voting meeting,
Before the
and
next
we'll
meeting.
have the appointment for that.
One other question on CPC is Jay's projects around housing going to be town projects, or who's going to be the actual, what's the entity that's applying there? Or is the housing trust going to be the entity that hasn't been created yet?
Right, it's a good question, because that one's in, as we've talked about it and it's sort of in development of
Yeah.
what would be this concept that's been thrown out of creating a housing trust. The housing trust will could end up being a town, or could end up being a separate entity, or could be just funds matching to say going to the municipal, I'm trying to remember, the Municipal Housing Development Corporation,
Yeah.
or Compact that Great Barrington uses, so I think we're not quite sure where that one's gonna come in.
Right.
As we
So
develop it, because this first year is just trying to get the money to seed it, to begin it, and what it's gonna take and become, I'm not, yeah.
Okay.
And on that note, actually, we found out we've been, and I have a call tomorrow about getting more details about the one that we're involved in through the other communities, so.
the other what?
That other rehabilitation one,
oh, yeah.
I'm trying to get more information on exactly what it is, how it's gonna work and the rest, so.
Oh, yeah. We have a couple of people in town who actually ran them in Eastern Massachusetts, at least one guy.
Yeah.
I'll give you his number and I think he can give you some insight into how at least some other towns have set them up.
All right,
Okay. Budget discussions?
Finance Committee threw this the other night. And this part will look familiar now. It's just in, oops, sorry. This part will look familiar. This is the typical budget item that goes to town meeting. Shows the different years, the different category expenses and the rest. Now, nor my highlights right now. Green are the ones that are mostly complete. Yellow are items that I'm waiting for other entities to supply, such as the school district. And then some are still in white because they're still in works. I should have Tri-Town in yellow as we wait for theirs. There's some red ones that I'm still trying to put together all the numbers. These are just more for me. So what I've done is taken that front sheet and then created different tabs that'll feed the front sheet. So the first one is the debt service. So what I did was put in all the debt going with the town, going forward all the way to FY 2038, which will be the last year of what current debt we have. And what this does is it allows us, the top is all of our debt. Then there's a percentage share of the sewer expansions. And then what needs to be budgeted at town meeting is down at the bottom. So what this allows us to do is take a look into the future to see when and where debt's coming off, when and where we could potentially take on capital expenditures, which would have little to no impact on the tax rate itself. As was pointed out, we do have to be concerned that there is the possibility of a school borrowing that could come on, and how much would that cost? But you can see that right now in 2025, we're gonna have over 300,000 of annual debt payments coming off. And then in 2027, we'll have another 400,000 plus coming off. So when you put it all together, you're looking at nearly 800,000 in debt that'll drop off by 2027. 800,000 in debt, 20 years out, 16 million with interest, probably closer to 15, 14 million if you can get it at 1.5%, which right now you may be able to do something like that. So it just tells us that there are some areas here where we could bring on additional debt without affecting the tax rate. And this is just as a plan, just as we're thinking about, oh, all right, do we want to bring on the chime tower for 20 years? So one of the things that you can do is you can do 2 years of interest only payments, and then do the principal payments over the remaining 18 years. So that would mean that because we don't have any debt falling off in 2022 or 2023, if you look at it, now that we've talked about it, 2024, we actually have in the neighborhood of 80,000 of annual payments. So if you timed it right, the interest payment on, say we were going to the chime tower 20 years, if that 25 falls into there, the debt would still go down that year, annual debt payment, and we bring it on then. It would mean that you'd have to add the interest payments for 2022 and 2023, but the interest payments on those years will be in the few $1,000s range. So this is just a tool to help us identify where our debt is, where our potential times are that we can take on capital projects.
Yeah.
In addition, within this document,
Can we start on debt for a second?
Yeah.
So, obviously, government bonds can be called at some point. It's my understanding, though I don't know for sure, that there are several that could be called this year. I think that, it strikes me that if there's some things we know at some point soon we're going to need to do, and we're paying too much interest because they were originally done at a rate that is now higher than current rates, when you can call them, you can basically refinance them, that it really makes sense to have an analysis of, I know there's it costs money to make the loan, to basically originate the loan, and whether or not it on balance saves us more to refinance at these really low rates.
Yeah.
But, I was, over 20 or 30 years, if interest rates, if we see some inflation and interest rates go up to 8 or 10%, I think over the last 30 years, it's been, about a third of those years it's been that high, believe it or not. For every 2 bridges you get at these really low rates, you get 1 bridge if the rates go up to like 8%. So while these rates are low, the money is so much, we can get so much more done with our money. Now, I'm not saying that we do things we don't need to do, but if we're going to fix some bridges, I think that we need to, not put off these decisions any longer as it relates to some of the things that have been kind of punted down the road for a long time.
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay.
100% agree with you.
Yeah, it's definitely something to consider. We will look at, I know, the last year I was in North End, we did bundle a whole bunch together, refinance them
Right.
as we were able to. I mean, some of the analysis that has to be done is how many years are remaining, because it might be not even worth it because of
Yeah,
the shortness of some of them
Right.
and things like that. So we'll definitely, I'll work with our new treasurer, tax collector, Erica Olson, who started Monday. And we'll take a look at those. We'll get our financial advisors from Unibank or any other banks that they'll assist in doing this analysis for you. And then figure out if there are some that we can go out and then look at what we'd like to do. So, you know,
Okay.
you can lock in them now. You can lock in some borrowings now and still only do interest payments, like I said, out 2 years, so that their impact doesn't hit until we're closer to some of the debt falling off.
It allows us to get this really low rate, which is obviously what we're talking about. And I think along those
Take
lines, we
advantage
talked
of it.
about this today. We should think about trying to find whatever the bare minimum money for engineering to get a solid specification on the Second Everett Road Bridge. I think we should try to do that. Just to get the big package together, whatever that requires. I think we should try to do that before town meeting. Because, otherwise we're waiting a year and a half just for the town meeting to do it. And then by the time we bid it out and get it, built, it could be 2-3 years down the road for another bridge out for that neighborhood.
Okay.
We can
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
definitely look into that.
okay,
yeah, you're right. Decisions need to be made.
so we should, we will be meeting with the finance committee, correct?
Yeah, we can, however you
I
want
wanna-
to structure that, joint meetings,
We used to do joint meetings with the finance, meet with the head of departments together.
Yeah.
And it worked out really nice because that brings the head of department in one time unless we have to call them back. Instead of going 2 different meetings, 2 different things and different questions. I think it worked a lot better meeting together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Patrick, you agree with that?
Yeah, sure.
And, get back to that and, get a good budget and
Right.
So
Get it
that's
done
one of the
reasonable
reasons why I
time.
want to get this document completed and get a
Yeah.
final document out to both the select board and the finance committee so they can take a nice deep dive. I'll keep the master. You guys can fiddle with the Excel at home. If you mess up the formulas, that's on yours. I can resend it to you. Or if you see some things that need to be adjusted or whatever.
When do you guys start doing the joint meetings?
when did we start?
Yeah.
It's been that way for almost since I can remember.
Long time.
We
They
stopped
didn't do it
doing,
last year.
we stopped doing it with the previous select board members.
And I don't think they had many meetings with department heads at all last year.
No, it's not good. We have to meet with department heads. It's just,
As
So
long
I'm
as
gonna-
there's an understanding that, that this is the authority, this board is the authority that raises and appropriates.
Yes.
And sets budget. So, I just want to be sensitive to the fact that, that we to maintain, prerogatives of this board, the
Maintain.
prerogatives of this board.
Right.
yeah, I mean, the final vote on what goes on there is the
Yeah.
select board's budget, but with the assistance and the great help from the finance committee, and they're the experts on it.
Communication is important.
Yeah, very much so. And we lost that the last year or two. And it
Well,
showed.
let's get there. I know last night I had a good meeting with the finance committee and I reviewed the same things I'm going over right now with the select board to keep everybody on the same page so that we can try to create answer the questions that need to be answered and how did we come up with these numbers. So I'm gonna show you one right now, which is the police department. So working with Chief Finley and Kim Shaw from down in the department, looking at how can we take as many knowns and start budgeting them. So this is still in draft form. Don't take these numbers as anything final. These are just the initial draft. But throwing in, we know the educational benefits. We know the fitness longevity. We also know that with the police department, we cover shifts. So when somebody's on vacation, we have to cover those shifts. So therefore, if you know that there's X vacation days, and the ones highlighted are the Chiefs and Kim's, we don't backfill for those, but we backfill for all the others. So we know that we need to cover 70 days of vacation every year. based on how many vacation days they've earned. So that's 560 hours. That comes out to a total overtime number of 28,000. We know sick time. We know training days. We know, so as we build this, and this will be something that we'll have to tweak every year to make sure it's accurate. There might be some years we may have to do additional training, some years not as much, and make adjustments. But what this does is this feeds into a bottom line, which then feeds, and like I said, these are color coded only for me, so I'm lining different things up, so colors on different pages. But these feed this breakdown summary that then feeds the front page that'll go to town meeting. So this just brings in all the different items, brings them together. And what I'm trying to do is identify as many knowns, and then we deal with the variables as best we can going forward. And there's always some variables.
But just to be clear, the numbers we're looking at here are not the
Are
accurate.
not, yeah.
So if anyone's looking at this, we're not.
There's no definitive, no nothing, they're just initial
Because we have
drop ins.
contractual.
But I wanted to run the committee through these numbers and identify how we're coming up with them. We're also taking expenses and breaking down each of the departments and how they're broken down as far as individual breakdowns, what was appropriated and what was expended for the last 3 years, what was appropriated last year, and then what's appropriated, recommended for the upcoming year. So this will allow us to look back and say, what were we spending in, what were we overspending, underspending, and allow us to really start analyzing this budget. So I've asked people to look at your budgets, try to rebuild them from the bottom up, and not just say level, not just say 1 or 2%, but say, what is the actual budget? We've done that with all of them, from general government salaries to the rest. And what I built in is also different components. So if we were to decide you're going to do 2% raises for people, you can put the, oh, I didn't enable content. Right. So if I do 2% in one field, if it's going to work for me, which it may not, but
That's fine. We know what
if
it
I hit the, sorry, it will actually build it automatically.
Yeah.
It'll calculate for it. So it will just allow us a tool to go forward. I know why it's not doing that, because my number lock is off. There we go. So that would tell you exactly what 2% impact would be, and then I can actually tell you as we begin negotiations and other things, exactly what it would be, because we're going to be talking about those things as we move forward. So if we're talking about all the salaries at the Department of Public Works, and we want to know what the impact is to an agreement, we can simply drop a number in, and it will tell us exactly what the impact is. So, and it's a little difficult to put together this first year, but it's something as we put it together years afterwards, it'll become much simpler and we'll build. There are a couple things that I am working on that weren't adjusted last year. We had a brand new contract for trash removal because our old one had run out, and costs jumped quite a bit. That wasn't reflected in the annual budget, and right now we're probably looking at, we're going to end up probably about 30,000 short in trash, and trash continues to go up. You can read about it. It's one of the big escalators. In addition, in the end of this, we'll also be tracking the revenue. And right now, I just have in the last year and just a copy of the current year, the recap numbers, and then the final one is a tax breakdown, which will show us approximately what the tax rate will be based on decisions that we're making. So once this document's done, and I should have it done by the end in the next 2 weeks, by the next time we meet, it should be completed. Myself and Teresa are working on this. And I'd like to thank her for all her hard work on this. But once we get it together, it'll be a tool going forward that allows us to really dive into these budgets and understand what's being asked and what's being requested. So In addition to that, let's see. Whoop. Okay. Screen sharing. Let's see, screen sharing. So I'm going to be I'm going to be putting out a budget document which explains exactly to all departments what a capital budget is, what the definition is being used, how to describe the project, and then developing a 5-year plan from. So it's items that cost 5,000 or more that have a greater life than 5 years. We want to identify those as capital items, and we want to put those into a capital budget request. And then have all those submitted by February 5th in order to move forward. The document that I'd ask them to use is going to be a capital improvement request form. What department it is, what they're asking for, what priority it takes, what criteria. Is it something that's a public safety issue, an emergency? Is it a court-ordered item? Is it an asset preservation, reimbursement? What is it? Brief description of the project, any identifying funding sources, and then try to analyze whether this will reduce costs in the future, will it be unchange our costs going forward, or will it increase operational costs as we move forward? And then where are some of the possible recommended funding sources for these different ones? So, this is just bringing a little more, asking people to submit something in a little greater detail as far as, and uniform as how we'll get it, instead of getting it in all different ways from different
Good.
departments. And then the other one that we'll be putting out is our procurement guidelines. So I'm gonna be releasing this to everybody, which basically, bottom line is, if it's over $10,000, you need to run it past me and Ray. When I say run it past, I'm not getting into as far as we have experts. I'm not gonna, Mike Buffoni's our water guy. He will make the determination this is something that we need to do a procurement for this. I will be checking to make sure that the procurement method we're using is the correct one anytime we're above 10. Ray, our accountant, will be certifying that any purchase above 10,000 has funds appropriated for it. So therefore, it will be triple checked. We have the expert that's asking for it due to their department, myself that is reviewing it for the procurement, and then Ray making sure that funds are available for it. So this will define for everybody how we work as a team in order to move projects forward, and that procurement is no longer in question. It is noted here, any purchases over 10,000, you must run it through this process before you order. Because one of the issues we were having is finding out procurement was off after we've already taken possession of the item. And that's very clear to Ray that Ray will not be paying invoices if you do not submit your purchase data form, which will be this form, which is a procurement data form. So basically, anytime it's from 10 to 50, you have to fill out this form. Over 50 is bidding, so that automatically falls to me. But 10 to 50 will be those items that sometimes, more often than not, are the ones that get us in trouble. So these are the ones that now we will go through the sheet, they will fill it out, explain what's being done, how we're gonna do it, I'll work with them. And then we have the sign-offs at the bottom from the department head, procurement officer, and town accountant. So this should correct those issues that were identified the last 5 years by our auditors as in our management letters as recommendations, and this year will be identified as a finding of fault that we were not following procurement. So this will tighten it up. I'll be putting it out to all the boards, commissions, everybody else. It's been being done informally, but this will formalize the process. So, and get us moving forward. So that's where we are with the budget. I can work now on setting up joint meetings. And like I said, by the 28th, I should have this document in a pretty good position to release it to everybody so that we can move ahead on the budget process for this upcoming year.
Good. That's great. What a difference.
Really excellent.
It's night and day. Thank you. Okay, schedule future executive sessions to discuss collective bargaining. We have one tonight, but what do we got to schedule?
Yeah, and then actually,
You want to hold off on that
yeah,
till we
we
finish tonight?
don't have to, do that because we can just, as chairman, we can place them on, so.
Okay, yeah, let's
that was-
hold off on
was
that, see what happens
That was
tonight.
a mistake on there.
Nope,
We do
no
have
problem.
just, is there anything you guys want on the next meeting for our project?
Yeah, I have a
meeting
memo.
tomorrow?
I'll have it to you tomorrow.
All right, so send it to me anything that we want to place on the project meeting and.
That's
as
next
chairman, that's up to you.
that's next
Approve
Thursday?
items, yeah.
8
So
o'clock
if
meeting.
there's anything, get them to me, then Chuck, I'll run them by you, and then
Okay.
if we're good, we'll place them on. I will be doing every morning one project update. So
Good,
we'll go
perfect.
through all the projects as far as, so you guys don't have to worry about that. We'll go through all the existing projects, status updates every month going forward. So it's anything else you would like to include beyond that.
Okay, before we go into executive session, any questions for anybody out there? Seeing none. I vote to enter an executive session per MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, and that we're not be coming out
Yeah, I don't,
into public session after.
we need a roll call vote.
Roxanne.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi, Chuck. Thank you.